Steen is calling for changes in the credit scoring system. Timely rent payments, for example, often do not get considered by credit rating agencies. And this disadvantages black home buyers in particular. In 2021, Fannie Mae reported that 17% of all households denied mortgages due to inadequate credit would have qualified if rental payments were considered. Rothstein also noted that many local governments and communities with higher numbers of blacks don't perform annual property reassessments, sometimes waiting up to 5 years or more. Assessments are more frequent in neighborhoods where white residents are the majority, which raises those property values faster. This leads to black people paying property taxes at rates higher than the actual market value of their homes.
This is a purely local issue. It needs to be addressed at a local level, and the only way to do that is with what we call in the book a reinvigorated civil rights movement that can demand remedies to this particular disparate impact on African Americans of the property tax assessment system.
And this renewed movement, he believes, would be more realistic than any expectation of reparations.
There are dozens of these specific policies, specific programs that can be addressed.
UC Berkeley professor Carolina Reed has researched the disproportionate impact of predatory lending on communities of color in California and their link to higher foreclosure rates. She says any progress requires a serious commitment from federal and state governments.
Part of, in my mind, a reparations agenda is having the federal government and state governments commit real resources to making those local ideas realities.
We will continue to cover how the debate over reparations plays out in California and beyond. Our series with reporter Lee Hawkins is called Golden Promises, the battle over slavery reparations in California. The series is also streamable on demand from marketplace.org. I'm David Brancaccio with our morning report. From APM, American Public Media.
ViStar Credit Union and 121 Financial Credit Union, two of Jacksonville's credit unions, are now coming together, all to better serve our members and give back to Jacksonville, the city we call home. Learn more at ViStar121merger.com. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or BaptistJax.com.
North Florida TPO, proud sponsor of WJCT's First Coast Connect, bringing to the community innovation in transportation planning, commuter services, clean fuels, and intelligent transportation systems. More at northfloridatpo.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Ahead in the next 5 minutes, live local news for the First Coast from the WJCT News team.
And it's now a minute after 9 o'clock. You're listening to WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Christopher Worrell of Naples has been sentenced to 10 years in prison on multiple felony counts that include assaulting police officers with a deadly weapon. Those charges stemmed from the January 6, 2021 U.S. Capitol breach incident. Worrell had been found guilty May 12th. Days prior to his sentencing, Worrell cut off his deep GPS ankle monitor and became a fugitive. His disappearance triggered a 6-week FBI manhunt that ended in his arrest at his home in Naples. The cost of housing and the cost of child care continue to undercut the well-being of South Florida's children and families. That's according to a new report from the nonpartisan Florida Policy Institute, FPI. The analysis found that on average, South Florida families working minimum wage jobs are spending 20% of their household income on children. Noreen Dollard is a senior policy analyst with FPI.
So it's not just parents, but it's childcare providers are really struggling and not able to, having a hard time paying wages that are competitive with other professions. So there needs to be support on both sides.
And according to the report, South Florida counties rank in the top third for overall child well-being based on a slate of education, health, community, and economic conditions. The afternoon should be mostly sunny and breezy here in Northeast Florida with highs in the upper 60s. Clouds and rain move in overnight lows in the mid-50s. And for Saturday, rain and thunderstorms should clear later on in the day, highs tomorrow in the mid-70s. For Sunday, partly sunny in the low 60s.
This is WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Opinions expressed on the First Coast Week in Review are those of our panelists and do not necessarily reflect the views of WJCT News 89.9.
Team of political observers and newshounds. Nikisha Williams, author, former TV news producer, and Jacksonville Today political columnist. Welcome, Nikisha.
Good morning, Jacksonville. Happy 2024.
Happy New Year. Investigative reporter Ann Maxwell joining us from our news partner, News4Jax.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. And Taylor Levesque, investigative reporter and multimedia journalist at First Coast News.
Hello.
Jack Webb, attorney and former city council president, in-house.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. Happy New Year.
And to our listeners, what stories caught your eye this week? We want you to join our conversation. Give us a call at 549-2937. Email us at firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. You can tag us on X at FCC On Air. You can also watch our program stream right now on the Facebook and the WJCT YouTube pages. So first, a dramatic farewell to the tribute to the Confederacy in Springfield Park. Last Wednesday, the mayor used private money to remove the controversial Women of the Southland statue in Springfield Park. The move was cheered by groups who have pushed for the statue's removal, but some on the city council objected strenuously, prompting some contentious discussions and the introduction of a new law that would prevent future removals of this kind. Nikisha, let me start with you, since this is an issue you've covered editorially for years. Was this an unqualified victory for the Take 'em Down crowd?
I don't know if it was necessarily unqualified. I think it was long overdue, and I think the mayor did what the council absolutely refused to do. And the fact that they have the audacity to be upset at her executive action when they had the money in the budget to do it themselves, and they said they wanted to study it first. What is there to study about removing a Confederate monument that was erected not during the Civil War, not during the time of chattel slavery, but in 1915, after the Civil War was over, after Reconstruction had failed, at a time when there was racial terror in the South that led to the greatest migration within a country of 6 million Black people away from the South? What is wrong about that when you refuse to do it? So no, it wasn't an unqualified victory. It was long overdue and well-deserved.
And Maxwell, this removal was met fairly swiftly with pushback from the city council. Explain what happened.
Yeah, definitely a controversial decision from many on the city council's point of view. Councilman Nick Howland, I've got a statement pulled up on our website right now. He said, Donna Deegan is our mayor, not our monarch, waiting until the cover of night on a holiday evening, no less, before taking a backhoe to the 100-year-old monument is an overreach of authority. He said the city council finance committee mandated funding spent must follow a council policy decision. Now we know that the mayor disagreed. She had an opinion from Office of General Counsel saying that she, through the Parks Division, had the authority to move the monument. This wasn't considered a historical monument. I'm not super plugged in with the inside baseball at City Council because our City Hall reporter, Jim Pickett, has really been all over that, but I know it's definitely met with a lot of controversy.
And we should probably offer just a few correctives to Nick Howland's statement. I mean, the statue was actually removed during the daylight hours, although the crews got there in the night. It was
right.
not a backhoe, right? It was removed pretty meticulously. I went there with my producer Stacy and watched a lot of it. Jack Webb, the general counsel for the city took a lot of heat at this meeting. He's only been in that position a couple of weeks, and he seemed like he was maybe a little bit on his back foot defending this decision to allow private dollars to be used to remove the statue without involving the city council. What are your thoughts about that, given the role that, city council really does control the purse strings typically?
It's a great question, and it sounds rather arcane because it's not. No one disagrees with what actually occurred. The statues were removed. No one in City Council wants to put them back. In fact, they're all probably drawing deep sighs of relief that they're gone, finally. That said, there is a lot of concern, if not outright anger, on the council right now with regards to the fall down of the process. Again, the opinion was a draft opinion. It was not floated. It was not vetted. It was not signed. In fact, my understanding, the GC at the Rules Committee, when he was questioned about it, said it's not complete. And so it's my understanding that the council president will have further discussion with him as to other issues with regards to the legality. It's also my understanding that that two prior general counsels had looked at the manner in which this administration went about removing the monuments, and was advised both in the Curry administration and the Deegan administration were advised you can't do it. So there's some issues here. The question of donations now, and whether or not they're illegal, whether or not this compromise the legitimacy, the legitimate role of the legislative body, legislative branch of government. The ordinance that is that Council President Salem is drafting is not retroactive. No one wants to put them back. The concern I believe he has is that a future administration, because Donna Deegan, the mayor's office, has said this is not going to happen again. It's a one-off. We're done. But there's a concern in the council that a subsequent administration, whether it be a right-leaning or left-leaning, could use this as an established process or practice to circumvent what is, council restrictions on the use of private funds.
So the question that I have heard asked repeatedly, Taylor, in this case, though, is why wasn't this kind of scrutiny applied when Mayor Lenny Curry removed statues from what's now James Weldon Johnson Park across from City Hall, not once but twice. So initially there was the statue of the Confederate soldier that was removed, and that actually did occur in the dark of night before, I think, at like 4 a.m. And then they went back and they removed the pedestal that he stood on separately. Again, that was using city funds. That wasn't using private dollars. But the council wasn't involved. The council wasn't notified in that case, and there really wasn't a peep about that.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't in Jacksonville when that happened, so I can't speak on why there wasn't that scrutiny. But I also understand that Lenny Curry had promised a lot more would get taken down while he was in office, and that didn't happen. So I don't know. I think that's the question for either the members who were on council at that time when he was mayor, and versus the members that are on council. Maybe they are wanting to make more change and bring that to light. I'm not sure.
Yeah, so if you look, Nikisha, that second part of the removal happened just this last summer. And so we're talking about a lot of the same people who were on council, including the council president.
We're talking about a lot of the same people, and what's happening now in city council with the legislation, as well as what's happening in the state legislature to try to pass a law to put them back and make all the work retroactive. It's retaliatory and it's partisanship, because no one said a word when Lenny Curry removed the statue from Hemming Park in 2020, the day before he announced that the RNC was going to be held in Jacksonville, though that was canceled due to COVID. I will never forget that. I don't give Lenny Curry any props for removing it, because it was like hiding one hand while doing something good. So no one said a word. What you have now is a problem because of who is in the mayor's office and the Democratic Party that she is a part of. And that's just stupid, because you're having these partisan ideals over truly a lost cause. Get over yourself.
I want to push back a little bit, too, on what you said, Jack. You said nobody wants to put them back, but there actually is legislation that's been introduced by a Jacksonville lawmaker, our own Dean Black, who used to be the head of the Republican Party here. He would propose putting back any statue that was removed since 2017. He would also call for the removal of any elected official or any official that removed a statue deemed historic, but obviously this is targeting the Confederate statues. And so, we really could see, Anne, some of the work that has been done to remove this legacy and these Confederate tributes. It's conceivable.
Right, and the bill hasn't passed at this point, but I actually interviewed Dean Black about this, our local representative who sponsored this bill last week, and he was telling me that their mechanism for trying to get local officials to reinstate some of these monuments, statues, would be withholding state funding for certain arts and culture initiatives. If those statues aren't put back, and as you mentioned, that would be for statues, monuments removed 2017 and later. So it would be that kind of strong arming from Tallahassee if this passes. And, I interviewed an attorney also about the bill. They said it's very vague. It'd be anybody can sue a local official if they remove this monument, if there's somebody who uses the monument frequently or goes there often, and they're like, that's really vague, needs to be clarified. And Representative Black said they are looking at a lot of amendments on this to clarify some of those points. So definitely something to look out for. And yeah, it is conceivable that there could be some strong arming from Tallahassee to try to get monuments like this put back.
We've got a call. Omar from Jacksonville. Good morning. Welcome to First Coast Connect.
Good morning. Yes, I'm of the opinion that that the Confederacy hasn't gone anywhere. They are still in politics, and the United States didn't have the courage to kick these people out. So that's what we have. That's the problem that we're dealing with today. With everything that we're dealing with today is because these people still take taxpayer dollars and build libraries and do reenactments and all type of stuff like that.
Thanks, Omar. I appreciate your call. And to our listeners, if you want to join the conversation, you can call us at 549-2937. You can email us at firstcoastconnect@wjct.org, or you can reach out on social media, where you can also watch a streaming live broadcast of all these beautiful faces. Jack Webb, how is that even constitutional, what Dean Black is proposing in terms of removing public officials who remove statues?
Probably not. But again, constitutionality is in the eyes of the Supreme Court of the state of Florida, so I don't have a whole lot of faith. Well, I'll walk that back. But I will say that I get a kick out of these so-called conservative Republicans. They're all about local rule, home rule. Then they get elected to Tallahassee. They want to tell municipalities what they can and can't do. I have a real problem with that. That's been going on, for a long time. But going back to the funding, though, I want to speak to this. I mean, the distinction between the Curry removal and this latest situation is that the monies were allocated to the Parks and Rec budget in that particular move, and he moved money around within the budget. So the council did actually act. They have to approve the CIP. They have to approve the budget. So it was money, not necessarily. In fact, what Lenny did was pretty consistent with what Donna Deegan did. He used his executive authority to remove them, yet he used allocated money.
I don't think, at least for the second removal, that was even something council knew about, though. That because they did ask Brian Hughes. I think at the time, Randy DeFore asked Brian Hughes, "Where's this money coming from?"
Mm-hmm.
And they also didn't know, in advance.
Right. Well, the council didn't know. I agree with that. But again, I don't think that's really the issue of the council not knowing. If the council was satisfied that she had acted in a manner consistent with the charter and the ordinance code, I don't think there really much they could say about it. The problem they have, I think, is that, for example, any private funds over $100,000 have to go into the CIP. Okay, it's well established. These are practices. These are established ways of doing business in the city. Managing money. I mean, you can't just have private money coming in and being expended, by the executive branch. There has to be some sort of internal controls over that, and that's really the issue here.
I disagree, because it's not about the process, it's not about the removal, and I don't even think it's really about the money. Maybe there is a process for outside money coming in and who approves it, but really this is about power. And the fact of the matter is that the Republican members on the Jacksonville City Council are upset that this Democratic mayor did what they refused to do. This is about power. And just like it's about power with the state legislators saying that they will remove a duly elected mayor from office who hasn't incited a riot, who is not indicted on 91 state and federal charges, who has the will of the people, did not try to steal an election, that they would think to remove her from office? Clean your own house first. This is about power. And the fact that they want to say it's about history, it's about context, it's not. The history is clear. The United States was founded on slavery. The monument to the women of the Southland they said it was to the women who stayed at home while the men were conscripted into the Confederate Army. I suggest that you read Stephanie Jones Rogers' book. They were her property. It was also about slavery. And the fact that you think that someone would stand up for the rights of Black people whose ancestors were enslaved and saying having a monument to their pain, to a part of our history that we still haven't reckoned with, and that it should stay standing and be an affront to those Black people in this city who still live in a second-class subsistence based on promises that were never fulfilled, that this mayor says that she's going to fulfill. You're mad that you don't have the power or the courage or the audacity to do it yourself. Get over yourself again.
We got to call Eugene from the North Side. Welcome, Eugene, to First Coast Connect.
Hey, good morning. First time calling since you took over the reins. Good morning to all on the staff and on the panel. What I have to say about it is, if you look at the side of the police officer cars, it say the bold new city of the South. And I think that Mayor Deegan made a bold move. I commend her for it. And, you know, bold people do bold things. And it's about time people start stepping up and making bold moves. If you're not going to use that, if we're not going to live up to that standard, we need to take that sign off the police cars.
All right. Thanks,
all,
Eugene.
and have a good day.
Appreciate it. Thank you. We have also a call, Linda from Mandarin. Good morning, Linda.
Good morning. I wanted to speak to Jack, and we were talking about, you know, protocol, what needs to happen. I think the original funding for that was Daughters of the Confederacy, some money from some state in 1917. So Lenny Curry tried to get it removed, and others, such as my city council in District 6, couldn't vote for it because they couldn't figure out a reason. So she saw that the legislation was about to change, and she took action. If they want this monument, private property. It's been 100 years on public property. I don't want my tax dollars paying for that.
Linda,
so move it to a public property and let them go and idolize that out in somebody's field.
thank you, Linda. Appreciate your call. Ann, I mean, they may be moving it to private property. Right now, it's kind of just mothballed. The mayor says it's safe, but no current plans.
Yeah, we actually, the day it was removed, the photojournalist I was with, we followed it in the car to where they moved it. It was just no ceremony. It was on the back of a flatbed truck, exposed to the air. You could drive by it. Nobody really paid any mind to it. They took it to a nondescript warehouse in Brentwood. And I think that they have it under a tarp out in the parking lot there. One of my, Jim Pickett, our city hall reporter, actually went out there and lifted up a corner and was like, yep, that's it. Because I'd seen it and I was like, that's what the shape looks like. So right now it's under a tarp. I mean, it was out in the elements for more than 100 years. So, I mean, it's probably fine outside. And it'll be interesting to see what does happen with it.
Taylor, Jack alluded to this, but it's hard to imagine, despite the blowback that happened this week from council, that they aren't just delighted to have this off their plate. I mean, this has been an issue that they've had to vote down, not vote on, listen to probably hours, thousands of hours of public comment. There's a weekly picket at the steps of City Hall every Friday. So I would imagine that there's at least some behind the scenes jubilation that this is no longer something that the council has to decide upon.
Yeah, and I've sat through countless city council meetings where we've listened to public comment and people one after another wanting these monuments taken down, especially anyone would take them down. Jack's. They've stood in front of City Hall every Friday, like you said, even other days of the week too, and made their voices heard. So not only them, but I'm sure, people, but then there's also, other monuments around the city. So I feel like we'll still see that battle with the other ones that are still up.
Well, we got to move on. A lot of things happening this week. Another big story, a man who spent nearly 45 years in prison, more than half his life, had his conviction overturned this week. 79-year-old Willie Lee Williams said he was moved to tears when a judge vacated his life sentence for attempted murder, and prosecutors announced they would not refile charges against him.
My life is over. I'm going to die in prison. And that was my mindset at that particular time, not knowing that God had a better plan. And this is his plan, for me to be free and be out there with my family and my friends.
That's Williams. We spoke to him at his house shortly after that judge made that decision. He was recalling being on the bus, leaving downtown, and what his thoughts were when he was headed to prison. But now Now he's free. Ann Maxwell, sadly, this is not the first time we've seen one of these cases in Northeast Florida.
Right. And I'm not super familiar with some of these other recent cases, but what's so interesting to me about this Willie Williams case is that back in the 70s, the key witness there was hypnotized and the defense wasn't made aware. And that was just so wild to me to hear that they didn't recognize him and weren't able to say he was the suspect there. But then after they were hypnotized, they were, and the Florida Supreme Court later said that you're not allowed to do that. And so, I mean, it's just amazing that this information has come to light all these years later.
And I think what's particularly remarkable about this, Nikisha, is that this is coming from the state attorney's office conviction integrity review unit. So they did the investigation after Williams contacted them. They found, the hypnosis question itself weird, but that was never disclosed. So that's a Brady violation. The state recognized that they did not turn over key evidence that could have affected the outcome. How important is the work that this unit is doing?
I think it's especially important. I think what we know about the criminal legal system is that when there is a high profile case, be it murder or whatever the crime is, there is always a rush to find a suspect and arrest them and convict that person and close the case to keep that record going, because these are elected positions. And when there is a matter of race involved, there can be a blind eye turned to inconsistencies, inaccuracies, and mishandlings of case material, which is what happened in Willie Williams' case. And furthermore, we have to look at the prison system in Jacksonville, yes, but in the United States as a whole, and what it does. And it's a warehousing of human bodies that is a holdover from chattel slavery. And in thinking about that history and that legacy, the work of the integrity unit is to say that there is a way to parse out what is actually criminal behavior and those who should serve time and be incarcerated for that, and what is a rush to judgment, shoddy police work, and just a rush to close a case by any means necessary and incarcerate people who do not deserve it. And Willie Williams did not deserve to be incarcerated. He did not deserve to lose the majority of his life behind bars for a crime that he did not commit.
We actually spoke to Williams' attorney, Brandon Scheck, after the hearing, and he credited the Fourth Circuit for finding the discrepancies in this case, which they then turned over to the Innocence Project of Florida.
Very rare, and I think it goes to what the prosecutors here in the Fourth Circuit are doing. It goes to their pursuit of justice. It should be commended. Absolutely, we think very highly of what they did here. They pursued justice in this case. They reviewed the case. They found out this information, and as soon as they found out this information, they realized that it hadn't been disclosed previously, and they went ahead and disclosed it to Mr. Williams, conceded in open court that this was in fact a Brady violation, and they did the right thing here. I think that that's not something that we see all the time happening.
So this conviction integrity review unit, Jack, is one of just 4 in the state. Mm-hmm. So the work that they're doing is pretty unique in this state. Mm-hmm. But his attorney said one thing that is not unique is Brady violations, that they see that really very frequently in these exonerations or conviction reversals, which is when key evidence was not turned over.
That's exactly what I was thinking. 2 things pop into my head. Where's the compensation from the state for a wasted life, right? How do you make this man whole? You can't. You don't. You start his life, you start his family. Number 2, how do you go back and fix something like that? I mean, I guess the only what I'm suggesting perhaps is some retroactive sanctioning of the prosecuting authority for violations of due process or for violation of the law. Have the legislature enact statute that says the courts have to go back and review this conduct. I mean, it's kind of like a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Let's go back and what is going on here? I mean, because it is. I don't want to say it's rampant, but it seems to be. It seems to be pretty prevalent, and it seems to be very race-based in many respects as well.
I mean, it's true that the exonerations that we've seen, Taylor, so far have all been black men. There was the 2 gentlemen, a nephew and his uncle, who spent I think 43 years in prison for a crime that they were exonerated for. Now, it's important to note they did not officially exonerate Willie Lee Williams in this case. They just said, acknowledged that they hadn't turned over key evidence. But certainly this is an issue that I think is, it's unusual that the information that Jack is talking about is in fact coming from the prosecutor's office, that they're doing that investigation work there.
Yeah, I think, like you said, how do you get your life back? How do you even, comprehend just the crazy life change that is? And I interviewed a man probably like 6 months ago, and same thing happened to him. I think he spent roughly 30 years in prison, and he was exonerated on his charges too. And he was convicted of a crime that happened in Broward County, and he wasn't even in Broward County at the time of the crime. So again, I think it's exactly what you said. How do you even, restart your life and build that time back with your family and your friends? And our reporter Andrew Badillo interviewed him last night, and he was talking about all the family that passed away while he was in prison, and how he wasn't there for all of those life changes, and how he even just rebuilds that. So it's a hard thing to comprehend.
It struck me as well when I was speaking to him that the one thing that really seemed to be like the most intense for him personally was the fact that he lost his mother, and that she wasn't there to see him have his conviction overturned. It's really hard to imagine just the loss of so many members of your family during a time when you're incarcerated wrongfully, Nikisha.
There is no way to make anyone who has spent one day in jail or in prison wrongfully whole. There is no way to make up for any time spent incarcerated when you did not do the crime that you are convicted of, and that you had to press and fight for your own liberation, when our criminal legal system is supposed to be built on the basis that you are innocent until proven guilty. And what we are seeing is that prosecutors rush to a judgment of guilt and then try to prove it in court, even if that includes withholding evidence and not turning over evidence to the defense so that the person who's being accused of a crime can adequately defend themselves. There is no way to make anyone whole in that process, because it is a deliberate and insidious prosecutory action to try to railroad someone just to close the case. You can't make anyone whole. There is no amount of money to get back 44 years of his life. Do you know how different the world is from 1970? There's no way to make him whole. There is no amount of money to recover for him losing his mother while he was in prison. Even if you give him money now so that he can live out the rest of his glory days doing whatever it is that he likes, you can't recreate that time. He can't get that back. And so again, we have to take a hard look at what we call justice in the system of laws that are supposed to enact justice, and think about, who was it justice for? Is it the people who are actually being harmed, or is it to keep somebody else comfortable?
All right. Well, we're going to have to move on. We've got a lot of other topics to cover this week. A lot of new laws taking effect, Dan Maxwell, in this 2024 year, with the new legislative session just queued up next week to get underway. But some of the more visible laws that we're going to notice around Florida, there's good move over laws kind of broadened. That's going to require people to get out of the lanes when there's vehicles and rescues stopped, which should save some lives. Jacksonville leads the state in some of these areas of safety, dangerous roads.
Right, for sure. I mean, we hear about pedestrians being hit all the time, and it happens on the side of the road when somebody's broken down. And what I kind of wonder about this is, like, how often is it that a law enforcement officer is going to see somebody who doesn't move over? But I think just the fact that this has happened kind of just puts that awareness in people's minds that, I need to move over. If I can't move over, you're supposed to slow down 20 miles per hour. Which I actually just learned today when I was researching this. But I mean, I just think even, the symbolism of this law, you can get fined, I think it's like up to $150 something if you do it, just will help drivers be mindful of those people there on the side of the road.
And we've had some really bad accidents, even just this last year, Taylor. It's like children who got hit while their vehicle was stopped, their parents on the side of the road. We've had road rangers who are supposed to be there to help also get hit. So it's a pretty dangerous obviously a very dangerous place, when you're on the side of the road. So this will be, I imagine, hopefully, hope that situation.
Yeah, I mean, we've done so many stories this 2023 about the dangerous stretch of I-95. So when you're going from Flagler County through St. Johns County to Duval, it's literally just a straight stretch of a road. So you're thinking, how do all these accidents happen? You're just literally driving straight. But I mean, I guess, when you're driving, you just get carried away and maybe people are driving too fast. And if there's a disabled car on the side of the road and semi trucks, and there's a lot of factors. But I mean, it's probably, this law is probably the best thing that probably could happen, especially with a stretch of road like that where we're seeing constant closures every day with
just lethal
crashes.
Yeah. Jack, I want to ask you about a different bill that's come because of your public service in the past. So there's a new financial disclosure requirement for mayors and other municipal officials. They're going to have to give a more detailed financial disclosure statement. It's led to a kind of a mass exodus on some smaller areas. But Jacksonville Beach also saw a city council member say that he was going to leave rather than make this disclosure. There was 15 resignations in Pinellas County, 3 resignations in North Palm Beach, 16 officials in West Palm Beach who are considering quitting or have quit already. What is happening?
I think, I think this is very well intentioned. I think you want transparency, you want full disclosure, potential conflicts of interest and things of that nature for a legislator on any level of government. But I will say that more disclosure doesn't necessarily lead to less conflicts. I mean, if it did, would we be where we are now, current situation in Tallahassee? But I think, it is very intrusive. I mean, having been in this position myself, it's very intrusive. And, if you're running for office, do you really want people to know, I mean, what your checkbook balance is? Because let's face it, I mean, people judge you in many respects. Well, he's a loser. His net worth is this. This person is this. So it's very intrusive and it's very uncomfortable because then the media publishes it, the prints it, which is fine. It's the province, but I think there's something there to that. Is that you really want your personal finances on the above first page above the fold in the Times Union. I don't think so.
Taylor, what do you think voters think when a lawmaker who's been serving actually steps down rather than make this disclosure? Does that raise questions about perhaps the votes that they've made or the decisions that they've made or their investments and how they might or might not impact the laws that they've reviewed?
I think it does raise some concern because I think the first thing that comes to your mind is, well, what are you hiding? What do you not want to tell us? And I actually spoke to Corey Nichols, who's the Jacksonville Beach councilman who submitted his resignation. I talked to him the day he submitted it, and he said very vocally, I have nothing to hide, but it's a privacy issue or a security issue. And he says he has businesses and, even though you are a council member and a lot of your personal life is out in public anyway, he was just saying how that was just a little bit of just privacy that he does have and that he should keep to himself. But then you also have, state officials who do have to disclose all of that, even to run. So to put now this requirement on local leaders, you would think, oh, well, that makes sense because a lot of other politicians already have that requirement. But yeah, I mean, I think we could see other council members also take this same step if they're uncomfortable with this too. But I also think it does raise questions of, well, what do you have to hide if a lot of your life is already out there being a council member and being one to represent the community too.
Nikisha, it's definitely getting harder for people to want to run for office. I don't think that that's just, apocryphal. People really are more concerned about being, the target of social media attacks, of, press attention, certainly, which I guess has always been a concern. But it does seem that there's a much greater likelihood that you're going to get tripped up or embarrassed or exposed if you're a public servant.
Yeah, and I think there's a fine line from being a public servant and having a public life and belonging to the public, right? And so just because you are in a position of leadership that the public has access to does not mean that you cease to be a private person or that the public is owed every aspect of your life. And so while I do see the side of it where it says, well, what do you have to hide? How much money someone makes from their outside ventures is not your business.
I mean, unless they're voting on those outside, unless
right.
people
Like
are...
that is truly not your business. And so I can understand. I do see both sides here. But again, just because you lead a public life doesn't mean you belong to the public. And that's whether you're serving on a city council, whether you're a reporter, journalist, radio host, podcaster, writer, whatever. Whenever we do things in public, especially now in the age of social media, that people sometimes feel that they are entitled to know about your life, to comment on your life, to give their opinions that you did not ask for.
Yes.
And as private people, we have to don't let Twitter and Instagram create a false intimacy that you don't have with people. You don't belong to the public. And so I think Corey Nichols, in stepping down, and all the other officials that you mentioned are saying, you know what, this is a bit too much for me, and I'm going to remove myself. And then it's going to be incumbent upon the state and local governments to decide if the new law is necessary and if they can get people to fill the positions.
And I think that the concern that the reason that this legislation was passed is, there are a lot of things that people are voting on. I think one of the big things that would stand out in Florida is there's tons of development issues, right? People who serve on city councils are constantly handling rezonings. They're constantly handling, waivers of certain, provisions. Development is probably, one of the biggest industries in Florida, possibly after tourism. And so if you, for instance, are investing in a, home company or some sort of building company, and you're voting on projects that might impact you personally in the pocketbook, people want to know that.
Right, exactly. I think that is important for people to know. And I will say not necessarily in the Jacksonville area, but in previous places where I've reported. This is my understanding is applying to some of these smaller towns, legislative councils. And in my experience, some of these small towns really can have the most corruption. You talk about a good old boy network when you're like in a really teeny tiny town and nobody's really covering your city council on a regular basis. Like that's kind of when things slide. So I definitely, understand the privacy concerns for some people, but I think this also could help shining a light on those potential conflicts of interest with things like development, like you mentioned.
There's also going to be some kind of lighter legislative initiatives that are taking effect. There's county courthouses are now going to have to provide lactation spaces for people who are breastfeeding. And there's also going to be a provision that allows Floridians to rent campsites earlier than out-of-towners. So if you're wanting to come to camp, so, for Floridians, that's kind of a big deal. I mean, Taylor, there's a lot of complaint that, nothing gets done in Tallahassee. Does this time of year give people some feeling, some hope that stuff is actually getting done?
I think so. I think with especially a lot of these new laws taking place, they're pretty vast. So I feel like there's something for everybody and changes that are getting made. And I think so. But I also think there's a lot more that can be done as well.
All right, Jack, I want to move on just briefly to an issue that really boiled to the surface yesterday, but has been a long, long time coming. The Laura Street trio. That's the three buildings that are on the corner of Laura Street and have been targeted for a long time for renovations. The city council this week pushed back a plan that would have involved a lot of city financing back to the downtown Investment Authority to review, saying that the plan that the developer had brought forward, which would have included $22 million in city backing alone, essentially, was half-baked. And sending it kind of back to the drawing board, the city council auditor also raised a lot of questions. What is your faith, your expectation that this project will actually get done?
I think in light of the growing momentum that seems to be out there for downtown with regards to downtown redevelopment, I think it'll ultimately happen. I think it'll get sucked up, just kind of pulled along, and ultimately it will happen. That said, Good for the council for rejecting good for the council auditor for climbing all over it. Good for the council for rejecting it and sending it back to DIA. My understanding, it did not get DIA approval. And so that the legislation or the ordinance that was proposed kind of really did an end around, circumvented the DIA, the Downtown Investment Authority, Lori Boyer's group. So, and I understand that former council president Lori Boyer, she came down pretty hard.
Yeah.
On the developer. Good for you, Lori.
Yeah. Another issue this year, sadly, is the murder rate and murders in Jacksonville in general. It's not the way anyone wanted to see this year start. And the first murder of the new year, a 14-year-old killed, and then on Wednesday, a 4-year-old who didn't die but was shot multiple times sitting in her mother's SUV just north of Dunn Avenue on Wednesday. Your station had a headline in that summed up the issue. It said at least 5 young children have been shot in the last 6 months and just one arrest made.
Yeah, it's really, really tragic. This was my reporting from yesterday, and we looked at some of these recent issues dating from August, and multiple issues of just these young kids. 3-year-old Kaylin Matthews shot and killed at a Southside apartment complex and some kind of dispute there in September. And then just a few days later, 6-year-old Mike King Sims, asleep in his bed apparently, bullet went through the wall, hit and killed him, hurt his 12-year-old sister. And the sheriff, TK Waters, was so outraged after this. He did a press conference and said, "We're going to hold you accountable. We reject this violence. These are innocent bystanders. We're going to hunt you down." And I think the fact that there's only been one arrest in cases like this over the past 6 months just highlights how difficult it can be to find some of these people. In our reporting, it's like JSO says they're looking for 2 men who left in a dark car. it's just so vague. So, you really see that care and concern and outrage from the sheriff's office. And I think this just highlights, they're innocent, really young kids who are getting caught up in other people's nonsense. And it's difficult to bring people to justice.
Sometimes the murder or the injury of a child gets the community motivated to take action. And I don't know, is there a sense, Jack, that just maybe nobody's got a fresh idea on how to handle this? It just continues and continues. And we should say our murder rate was somewhat down last year.
Right. It's interesting. You make a really good point. I remember when I was first year on council, John Pate was mayor, and the murder rate was through the roof. And I think there was another senseless shooting. I think it might have been in Eureka Gardens. I'm not sure. I really don't recall specifically. But that was I remember John pushing for additional funding for JSO in that budget.
8-year-old Drashana Davis.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good memory.
Killed while she was in her house, actually shielding her siblings.
That's right. It sparked incredible community outrage, and that was the I think that was the origins of the Jacksonville journey, and it really was. Come on, everyone got together. We really need to fix this now. I think was the mantra at the time. I hope that there's some community outrage, and I know the Deegan administration is pushing forward with basically dusting off the playbook for the Jacksonville journey. So let's see where it goes.
All right. Well, it's time for our lightning round, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Brady, for that lightning effect. I'm going to start with you, Ann Maxwell. What do you got cooking?
Well, I'm continuing to follow in my reporting some of these stories about these stolen cars being used to ram the front of stores, which is just so wild to me. I know they've made 2 arrests, so we're still waiting for more info on that, because it's apparently these young kids, and it's really
Very
crazy.
stealable cars. Yeah. Nikisha, what are you working on?
I'm working on my column for next week, talking about more about the monuments and state of books here, but I'm looking forward to the album release party tonight of Love Culture at the Walrus in Avondale. They're a local hip-hop and R&B group, and they're releasing their 3rd album tonight.
Excellent. Taylor, what are you working on?
Working on the same thing Anne's working on, those burglaries. Something we've been following all week. It's a crazy story of how easy these Kias and Hyundais are getting stolen and used to just ram into stores. It's a wild thing to cover. So
This is a wild story. And Jack Webb, what's new with you?
Jaguars winning in. And we're in the playoffs. Let's do it.
You're confident? You got money on that?
No money on it, but I'm pretty confident.
I'm not that confident.
That's why I'm not in public office. I like my privacy.
Well, we appreciate that. I'm actually going to be out of town next Friday, but I do want to give a shout out to my producer, Stacey Bennett. She's going to be producing here at the WJCT Soundstage, opening up for Sunny War. Tickets are on sale. It will be a banger, so don't miss it. Guys, don't miss it.
We'll be there.
We'll be there. All right. Well, thank you all for being here. Nikisha Williams, Taylor Levesque, Jack Webb, and Maxwell. Appreciate all your thoughts. And we're going to be right back with Mr. Al Pete.
Thank you.
Congaree and Penn, dedicated to agriculture and culinary endeavors, offering field-to-fork dining and outdoor experiences on over 300 acres. Sip, dine, explore. Information at congareeandpenn.com.
Wayne Hogan of the Terrell Hogan Personal Injury and Wrongful Death Law Firm. Serious injury cases are complex, and civil trial attorneys present the evidence juries need to see and hear. More at waynehogan.law.
Polls suggest Donald Trump is already good to go in Iowa, but those close to him say that primary race isn't his top concern. What is? How the Supreme Court will decide on the push by some states to keep him off the ballot.
They're trying so hard to look neutral that sometimes they make the wrong call.
A new year and all that made the news this week on The Roundup. Next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Jacksonville Music Experience is launching a new evening of music programming on WJCT News 89.9. The Saturday evening shows will also be simulcast on the Independent 89.9 HD4. So this new programming draws on JME's really impressive lineup of contributors. I'm joined now by Mr. Al Pete, whose new program is The Neighborhood. Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having you, too. I'm also joined by David Luckin, our station manager and host of the Electro Lounge.
And it's so nice to be here, especially to talk music.
It's nice to see you on this side of the glass.
Really? Usually I'm on the other side pointing at Ann.
So, David, tell us a little bit about what the new lineup is and why we're moving gears in that direction.
There is so much good local music along the First Coast from Fernandina Beach down to St. Augustine. We can't squeeze it all into the HD4 channel, so we've decided to put some really good music, local music, hyper-local programming on Saturday nights and give us all a break from the news a little bit, too.
Excellent. And so we'll have a variety of music programs to listen to. What are the...
Well, Hurley Winkler has got this great show called the Jack's Music Hour. She will lead us off at 8, and then Al Pete's Neighborhood will be on at 9, and then the return of the Electro Lounge at 10.
Hey, welcome
so
back.
We're happy, and we're all really hyper-local. We really care about the community. We really love music more than anything. And that's why we're doing it. It's a labor of love. And when Al Pete made his first pilot, I said, oh, absolutely. How fast can we get this guy in the air? Hurley's was the same way. Her pilot was excellent. That's how it usually works. If you come to us with an idea, we say, make a pilot.
Yeah. So, Mr. Al Pete, tell our audience, like, kind of who you are. What is your musical inspiration, and how do you produce this show?
So, ultra hip hop. I love hip hop music. Soul, neo soul, funk, jazz, etc. The fusion of things. So on this show, just going to be highlighting the community aspect of the hip hop, like the more conscious hip hop side of things. And I'm also going to have some interviews with some some neighbors, some people that have local businesses and stuff like that. So just kind of put people in tune with what's going on in Jacksonville, Florida.
Like musical businesses or just businesses?
Business, everybody.
The neighborhood.
The neighborhood, yeah. I mean, it will definitely be concentrated on the local artists, local influencers, visual artists, stuff like that. But definitely want to get, some restaurants in there, some people that's doing some very, very great things creatively.
Excellent. And what is the state of hip hop in Jacksonville right now in terms of being, a creative place?
Oh man, it's so elevated. You have people like Vibe Live, definitely Love Culture, my family Love Culture. They've just been tearing up stages and just being very prominent in these media spaces and just in the community, just being very collaborative with things. So, and they just have a bright future that I would like to highlight and just put a lot of their music and other local hip hop artists in there.
Any sneak peek you want to give us? I mean, tomorrow is the launch.
Sneak peek? No, it's just gonna be some regular music. I would say later in February it will be like more interviews and the more detailed, creative things. But I wanted to get things rolling first.
And David, you have been working tirelessly on this new program. I know because I've gotten to preview a few of them. Really good stuff. But
Electro
what?
Lounge, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, everybody should be glad the Electro Lounge is back. Tell people who may not be familiar with it what the vibe is.
It's really music without walls, is what I call it. And it's all in the down-tempo vein. We don't play any real hardcore music in any style. But I will play jazz. I'll play Miles Davis. I'll play Robert Glasper. I'll play Johnny Cash. We'll play anything. If it's good music, it's in.
And how do you come up with a show in your head?
I literally do it live in my head like that. I mean, I look at a bunch of songs and think what order they might be in, but then usually when I'm putting the show together, I'm sure it's the same for Al. One song makes you think of another, and in your best laid plans are like, oh, I got to play this one now, and this leads right into this one. So it's a great creative endeavor, pretty spontaneous though. I don't unless it's a theme. I mean, if I'm thinking let's do songs about rainy nights, then obviously I have to think differently. But otherwise, I just do it out of my head.
And you have also, though, put together the lineup for Saturday nights. I mean, you've been in charge of creating that flow. And so what's the goal on the weekends?
To really bring the community into this station and to export this station into the community. Like Hurley's show is going to do a lot of local music and bands that are coming to town. So it's going to be a nice preview of everything that you need to know musically. Al's going to give you the neighborhood from good food to good music. And then the Electro Lounge will help you forget it all. We'll just make you fall asleep to dreamy music. No, it's all good. I love all kinds of music.
Yeah.
That's all I can say. I play anything that I think is good.
Is this your first foray into like the public radio sphere?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what's your feeling about that?
I'm excited about it. I'm excited. I'm glad that I got the creative leeway to do it. So looking forward to taking people through the neighborhood, just walking through a typical neighborhood with great music and great vibes. So, sure.
David, this is going to be a little nerdy, but, so besides listening on the radio, which most people can tune in, how can listeners access this? What are the various platforms?
The app always, my WJCT app is on my phone. It lists all of our stations, our classical, our oldies station, our classic rock station, and our independent station, plus our news station is on there. You can go to jacksmusic.org if you're at home on a PC. There's a player right at the bottom of the page. So the app, the player.
How about the
what
radio?
Am I forgetting? In the old-fashioned radio. Oh, HD radio. You may have HD radio in your car and don't even know it.
So I think that's the case for a lot of us.
Right. But this is going to be on the main channel. We will simulcast it on HD4, but everyone's going to get to hear this Saturday nights at 8 o'clock with Hurley, 9 o'clock with Al, and 10 o'clock with me. That will be on the main channel and HD4. And it's all to promote the independent. We have so much great music on the independent. We want people to know that there's an alternative to all the news that we're producing. You don't have to leave us. Go away, listen to the independent during the day. We just hope you'll come back for All Things Considered.
Yeah.
Well, we are so excited about the new Saturday lineup. Welcome to the world of NPR.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Mr. Al Pete, David Luckin, thank you for being here, both of you. Appreciate it. And that's our program. If you missed anything, check out the rebroadcast at 8 o'clock, or you can find today's show at WJCT.org and on your favorite podcast platforms. Don't forget to join us this Saturday afternoon at 4 p.m. for What's Health Got to Do with It? That's with neurologist Dr. Joe. He's talking this week about the importance of prioritizing brain health. And join us again on Monday. We're going to take a look ahead at what to expect in Florida's legislative session. We're also going to sit down with Council President Ron Salem. I'm Ann Schindler, and you've been listening to First Coast Connect on WJCT News 89.9.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
North Florida TPO, proud sponsor of WJCT's First Coast Connect, bringing to the community innovation in transportation planning, commuter services, clean fuels, and intelligent transportation systems. More at northfloridatpo.com.
ViStar Credit Union and 121 Financial Credit Union, two of Jacksonville's credit unions, are now coming together, all to better serve our members and give back to Jacksonville, the city we call home. Learn more at ViStar121merger.com. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com.
This is WJCT News 89.